Hi, I'm Gail Rubin. Welcome to A Good Goodbye, funeral planning for those who don't plan to die. Hi, I'm Gail Rubin, host and author of A Good Goodbye, funeral planning for those who don't plan to die. Welcome to today's show, brought to you by the fine folks at French Funerals and Cremations. As the doyen of death, check out the pearls, I'm all about getting the funeral planning conversation started. A doyen is a woman who's considered senior in a group who knows a lot about a particular subject, and that would be me when it comes to the party no one wants to plan, a funeral or memorial service. By thinking about what you'd want in your funeral and having that conversation before there's a death or illness in the family, you can reduce stress at a time of grief, minimize family conflict, save money, and create a meaningful, memorable good goodbye. That's what this program is all about. Just as talking about sex won't make you pregnant, talking about funerals won't make you dead. And your family will benefit from the conversation. So let's get that conversation started. Our guest today to discuss green burial and eco-friendly funerals is Darren Crouch, president of Passages International. Welcome, Darren.
Hello, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about Passages International. What is it? How did you get involved with this business?
Passages International is a company that a partner and I founded about 14 years ago. My wife's family is actually in the funeral business and owns funeral homes. And her brother had conceptualized an idea to introduce an eco-friendly and biodegradable option to funeral homes and families. And over the years, we've developed the company, we've developed the product line, and as you'll see during this program, we have several different products made of different materials that will meet the needs of families in the funeral industry.
Mm-hmm. So what is an eco-friendly funeral?
Well, I think it really depends on who you ask. Most people will agree that an eco-friendly funeral will not involve embalming. It will not involve concrete or plastic vaults. It will not involve traditional metal caskets. And generally, we're trying to reduce the footprint or the carbon footprint left by our death. And so there are many versions of an eco-friendly or a green funeral, but generally they incorporate one or more of those elements.
Mm-hmm. There are many shades of green, even among green burial grounds. We have information from the Green Burial Council, greenburialcouncil.org, that does actually list green burial grounds, hybrid burial grounds. Can you talk a little bit about those differences between?
Sure.
grounds?
You know, I don't know the exact definitions of all of them, but I do know there are different versions of cemeteries. So for example, there might be, you know, the darkest shade of green, which would be a conservation burial ground, for example, where the intention is that the body's buried without embalming or caskets or vaults or anything like that, and the idea is that that property will go back to nature and become
and it's
part
natural landscape.
Yeah, and there's no
whatever,
maintenance to it at all. Whatever
right.
grows, grows.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes all the way to incorporating green into what we might consider a traditional cemetery that are commonly called hybrid cemeteries, where, you know, you might have a traditional green, you might have a traditional part of the cemetery that's maybe been there for 100 years, but they're also incorporating a portion of that land and they're dedicating to that to greener funerals, where they may allow families not to bury with the vault, or they may invert the vault. They may encourage natural caskets or no caskets at all, no embalming, that type of thing. And really, that's really up to you know, the cemetery owner or the cemetery association to determine what they can, based on what they have available, incorporate into that.
Or also the idea of whether the cemetery uses pesticides or not on treating the grounds.
Exactly.
I believe is another level.
I mean, you can go a long way with this,
Yeah.
going all the way down to, you know, walking mowers versus riding mowers,
Oh my gosh.
hand dug graves versus
Yeah.
backhoes. I mean, it goes a long way. It just depends how far you want to take it, really.
Yeah, yeah. So do you see a growing demand for green burials, or we will talk about cremation as a separate part of going green, but
Sure.
for this kind of going greenness?
We see a large increase in demand. I mean, our company continues to grow every year, and that's a good barometer of growth in the industry. We're one of the largest suppliers to funeral homes around the country.
That's right. You are a wholesaler, so nobody buys directly from you. They buy
Correct.
through a funeral home.
Correct. So a
Yeah.
family would have to ask their funeral director to get our product for them.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I mean, it's growing even through this economic climate. Our sales continue to grow, which is telling me demand is increasing. And more we hear from funeral directors that have families come in and say, I want a green funeral.
That's great. Now, I understand you offer carbon neutral shipping. What does that mean?
It's actually a program that we work with our shipping company UPS on, and they have a service where we can actually pay extra per shipment that they send for us, and they take that revenue and they donate it or invest it in carbon neutral or carbon offset programs all over the country and all over the world. And if you can imagine a company like UPS or FedEx or any of these big companies, I mean, they're shipping millions of packages every day, and that can leave a significant carbon footprint. So we want to do our part to try to reduce that footprint.
Well, let's talk a little bit about cremation. Speaking of carbon footprints, the Cremation Association of North America estimates that an average cremation generates 532 pounds of CO2 per average sized person. Yet, once you've cremated the body, there are different ways of keeping or disposing of the ashes. Do you have any insights into regarding what people want to do with ashes once they've had a loved one cremated?
Well, I think it really varies. I think more and more, because we're a mobile society, people are not living in the same house or the same city they lived in 30 years ago. And so scattering has become more and more popular. And a lot of products that we have are either designed to scatter from or to be placed in the earth or the water. Once they're placed in the earth or the water, they're designed to break down naturally over time. And it really depends on the materials. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later as to how each of them works.
Yes, yes. Well, in fact, why don't we actually look at what we have in front of us is a wicker basket casket. Now this, I love this because my husband does the laundry in our family and he's going to be buried in a wicker basket casket.
Yeah.
So what's on the inside? We're not going to lift the lid, but...
It's a very simple lining. It's a natural cotton interior. It's fully lined. These kinds of caskets are not made to be similar to traditional caskets. Traditional caskets have a lot of padding, they're very plush, they're somewhat opulent. People that see value in these types of caskets are looking for simplicity, they're looking for a lighter carbon footprint. And so that's what we strive for with this type of product. This product can be cremated or buried. There's no plastic in it, there's no metal in it, there's no additives in it. It's a purely natural product. And the beauty of willow, for example, is it's a sustainable material because it's very fast growing and it's very renewable.
And you have other types of woven caskets? We
do. We have a similar casket also made out of willow, but we also have a bamboo as well, which is a woven bamboo. Yeah, we have a seagrass casket, but the seagrass is really decorative and ornamental. The structure of it is primarily willow still.
Okay. And then, I didn't think about that you could actually cremate a body in that. And of course, when you do have somebody cremated, you need to provide some kind of container to put the body in to go into the retort. So that is a really nice option to know about. Let's talk about this one urn here. What's special about this urn?
That's actually made out of cornstarch. And so that urn is designed to biodegrade in the ground, but the beauty of cornstarch is, as you know, if you go to Whole Foods and get a knife and fork at Whole Foods, is they don't biodegrade quickly, they biodegrade over time. So we have families that will purchase that urn and they'll use it to store the cremated remains. And it can be stored indefinitely because it will not biodegrade until it's placed in the earth.
That's good to know. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue our conversation with Darren Crouch of Passages International and dig a bit deeper into the topic of green burial and eco-friendly funerals. Hi, I'm Gail Rubin, host and author of A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die, and creator of The Newly Dead Game. The Newly Dead Game is like the classic TV show The Newlywed Game, but the questions test how well you know someone else's last wishes. It's a fun way to get the funeral planning conversation started. For more information about The Newly Dead Game, visit agoodgoodbye.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Darren Crouch, president of Passages International. So let's continue this conversation about green and eco-friendly funerals. So Darren, how do families find out about green burial, eco-friendly funerals? I mean, is there a source?
Well, I think that's one of the challenges that we've had as a company is educating consumers that they can green their funeral. You know, people know that when they want to get organic produce at the grocery store, they can go buy that. If they want to buy a hybrid vehicle, they can go to Ford or Toyota and buy a vehicle like that. What they don't know when a loved one suddenly passes away is that they can take steps to green up that process. And whether that's, you know, using a biodegradable urn after cremation or using a wicker casket for burial, they can do those things. And because we've identified that people don't ordinarily know they can do that, we actually launched a website called greenerfuneral.org. And it's a website designed to educate consumers about the steps they can take to green the funeral process.
That's great. You talk about burial, cremation, water disposition.
Yeah, we try to touch on everything that a family could do. We want to give them as many options as we can, because what we found is that most families, every family's idea of green is different. So what's green for you may not be green enough for me or too green for me. And so what we as a company try to do is provide alternatives for families so that if they want to be a light shade of green, we have options for them. If they want to be a very dark shade of green, we have options for them. And we're trying to educate funeral directors to be offering the same type of alternatives to families as well, so that when families come in, you know, when they say green funerals, the funeral director shouldn't just assume what that means. They need to ask, well, what does that mean to you? Because what it means to me and what it means to you could be very different.
Exactly, exactly. Well, let's look at a few of the cremation urn products that you offer that are green. I love this one. It's a Himalayan rock salt urn.
Correct.
And it's such a beautiful urn. I would keep this around. I actually have a lamp that has a light bulb inside of it, so it has a nice amber glow. But this is actually meant for disposition in the ocean, correct?
Correct, yes. It's, I mean, we mine it in solid blocks of salt, and we turn it on a lathe, and there are no additives in that whatsoever. When we put that in the water, it dissolves in about 4 hours.
Wow.
So, you know, California actually is passing some new legislation that is requiring this type of urn for families that want to place cremated remains at sea.
Well, and speaking of doing that, the EPA has a rule about being 3 nautical miles offshore to avoid pollution.
Correct.
But there are no cremation police in the United States who are going to, you know, come up and say you can't scatter here.
Exactly. I think part of it has become a bit of a liability where they don't want urns washing up on the beach or a fisherman pulling one out and having cremated remains in there. And so the urns that we supply are all designed to float briefly so that families can say a goodbye, put flower petals, sing a song, read a poem, and then they sink and they biodegrade.
Well, and in fact, here on the casket, we have some examples. This one is the shell.
Correct.
Right? And of course, you can see it looks like a shell, but it's got this line of holes here on the top and a bunch on the bottom. This is the bottom.
Correct.
Yeah. So what you would do is it opens up and you would put the cremated remains inside.
Correct. There's a place where you put the cremated remains inside, you glue it back together, and then when you place it in the water, water comes in from the bottom, air goes out the top, and it sinks. This product is a really interesting product because it's actually made from recycle paper. We actually get the paper from a company that makes paper plates and paper cups. So it's a non-toxic, food-grade paper that biodegrades completely in the water.
That's wonderful. And you have this other model, which I understand won an award.
Yes, that was actually designed by a Swedish company that's done work for the likes of Volvo and IKEA. And they designed the product. And the concept with this product is that we provide a pack of note cards that the family would get. They could write personal notes on it and then place it into the urn prior to being placed at sea. And this urn's called the Memento because of it. But yeah, this is a very prestigious Red Dot Award. It's given out every year in Europe.
Yeah, and it's got the holes there in the bottom to let the water in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
And then you have scattering urns.
Yes. We have products designed to be scattered from. Everything we've talked about so far is designed to be placed in its entirety in the water. Something like this is designed to be scattered from. And the way it works is the family would simply remove the lid, and on the top of it, I'm not sure if you can see that, there's a perforated die cut. The family would push their finger through that, and then they would scatter the cremated remains. We actually have a new feature with this particular product where we can actually put a photograph of the deceased on the top with the dates and the name of the deceased as well. So it's completely personalized.
And then you can recycle the carton.
Yes, it's made from recycled content, and then it can be either kept or recycled after it's used.
And you have smaller versions so you can split up.
Yes,
among
we
the
have
family?
mini sizes so that, you know, instead of grandma scattering grandpa's remains, it might be the children and the grandchildren all have a portion and all scatter a portion of the remains.
And then another biodegradable urn is over my shoulder here with the
Footprints
sand
on
and
it?
gelatin.
Yes, that's similar to an unfired clay. And we have several different designs, but that one is particularly popular because it actually has sand on the outside of it and footprints in the sand. It's a very evocative image on the urn, and it's a very, very popular urn for us. And again, that dissolves in less than a day in the water.
Okay. And then you have these other little, what are these?
We call those blooming bookmarks and blooming mini cards. And the idea behind those is that the ornament that is glued to that card actually has wildflower seeds in it. And so those are given out by funeral directors across the country to families that are attending services, and they have the name of the deceased on them. And each individual can take it and either keep it or plant it, and it'll bloom in memory of the deceased.
Nice, nice. And do you have, you know, people love their animals, their pets.
Yes.
Do you have
We do have a line
options
of
for
pet products.
owners?
Yeah, we have caskets made out of wicker for pets. We have smaller versions of many of these urns that you see today that are designed for pets as well. In fact, the one with the footprints on, we have one with paws on it as well.
No.
So, yeah.
So what, if any, misconceptions are there about green burial? Do you know of any issues that?
Well, I think people
don't
think
know?
you have to be green or not green. And I think what people don't realize is they can pick and choose where they want to be green or how green they want to be. And so if they're educated about the options, you know, there's nothing to stop someone embalming a body and placing that body in this willow casket and then putting this willow casket in a vault at the cemetery they paid $5,000 for 10 years ago. And that's why we use the word greener and not green, because you can never be green enough. If we transport this casket from point A to point B, we've burnt fossil fuels and it becomes less green. And so we use the word greener, and we want to provide families with options to green up the process. And they can pick and choose what is meaningful to them in terms of greening that funeral process.
Is there an issue with obesity that you address? I know in traditional funerals that people are making larger caskets in metal and wood. Are there larger caskets in the green world?
We've looked at that. I think our market is more often health conscious, outdoorsy, those types of people.
Those are going to be the obese people.
So they tend to be not on the obese side.
Yeah.
However, I think that is certainly going to be something we need to look at in the future. And really, I think one of the misconceptions about this is you don't have to be a Whole Foods shopper driving a Prius to green your funeral.
Well, and I think the wicker basket caskets are a nice option for Jewish and Muslim burial.
Absolutely, and we hear that a lot from funeral directors that contact us.
Would somebody who was going to get one of these, but maybe the body had to be shipped elsewhere for burial, I know that with a traditional casket, you have something called an air tray, which is a wooden platform underneath and cardboard around it. Would a casket like that with a body be shipped in a similar manner, do you think?
I don't see any reason that it couldn't be. I don't know specifically the airline regulations. Each airline may have a different regulation, but there's no reason this product wouldn't fit in an air tray. Our standard size casket is the same length and the same width at the shoulders as a traditional standard casket. So in terms of the logistics of it, it would work. And with regards to the regulation, I can't speak to that 100%.
Well, body shipment does, with TSA regulations, does have to be done by a funeral home because those are known shippers, is what they're known as. And another thing to think about that we didn't really get into the specifics of at the beginning was that how much resources are used in traditional funerals. You're talking about many, many board feet of hardwoods, concrete, enough concrete to build a 2-lane highway from New York to Detroit, going into the ground every single year, and enough metal to build the Golden Gate Bridge going into the ground.
Enough formaldehyde to fill like 8 Olympic-sized swimming pools. I mean, it's a lot, and we can do better.
We can do our part to leave a smaller footprint on the world. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Were there any other products that we didn't get to talk about that you might want to mention?
We have a line of products called our Earth-Urn collection, and that's an interesting product because it's actually also made of paper, but it's a different type of paper. It's actually a handmade paper. And the beauty of that product is we don't cut down trees to make the paper. So what we do is we harvest the limbs of the tree, harvest the bark of that tree, and we use that to produce the paper. And then it's made completely by hand. So not only is it biodegradable on the consumption end, but on the production end, it's completely renewable as well. So
that's great.
That's a very interesting product line.
And actually, I guess people can learn about all of those different products at your website, passagesinternational.com.
Correct. They can learn about it there, yes.
And they can also learn about what it means to green up their funeral at agreenerfuneral.org.
Correct.
So, well, I really appreciate you coming in today and sharing this. I personally plan to be green with my final arrangements. Because Jewish burial is naturally green burial, and I encourage people to talk about that and have a conversation with their families.
I agree.
So thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
And so I appreciate having Darren Crouch, President of Passages International, and a big thank you to the French family of companies for supporting today's program. And just remember, there's more information about what we talked about today at my website, agoodgoodbye.com. And remember, talking about sex won't make you pregnant, and talking about funerals won't make you dead. Start a conversation today.
Another holiday, graduation, promotion, anniversary, and of course, the birthdays. When you add all these events together, life can seem like one big celebration. At French Funerals and Cremations, that's exactly what we think life should be, a celebration. Since 1907, the French family has been committed to celebrating life. When it comes to celebrating a loved one's life, we welcome you into our home, and we're here to help with the planning and details.
It's been said that Americans bury enough concrete each year to pave a 2-lane road between San Francisco and Phoenix. Passages is the leading global supplier of green and biodegradable funeral products. We think being environmentally conscious is not a choice. It's a responsibility. That's why we create eco-friendly and biodegradable cremation urns, caskets, and memorial offerings. Go to earthurn.com or call 888-480-6400 today.